Hi, this is Rosalind Yukich, and I am so glad that you're joining with me today. I just want to start off by saying that this is a video that is in conjunction with an open collaboration with the Ingrid Chronicles. And so in this collaboration, I'm going to be sharing with you Honest Answers Homeschool Mom Edition. I'm a homeschool mom. So I'm really excited to be joining in on that. I enjoy doing these collaborations. I really enjoy that so much. I have enjoyed so much on YouTube getting to know a bunch of new homeschool moms. And, just getting into this, YouTube homeschool community has been a real enjoyment for me, as well as an encouragement for me as well. So there are 5 questions that I'm going to answer for this collaboration video. I have someone in the background talking. But before I do, I just want to encourage you to go into the description below and check out the playlist where other homeschool moms have uploaded their videos. I will say I found this collaboration by just checking out a bunch of channels that I'm already subscribed to. And there were a couple of people that I follow that had already done a video for this collaboration. And I was so encouraged by listening to them. And then when I found out that it was an open collaboration, I was like, yes, I need to submit my own video. So be sure to check out that playlist, because I know you're going to be super encouraged just like I was. So the first question is share 3 reasons why you chose to homeschool. Probably contrary to popular opinion of those people that know me in real life, I did not choose to homeschool because we had a conflict with my son's school. My oldest son attended kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and half of 3rd grade. And while I did have a definite difference of philosophy with the school and his teacher in particular, and how education should happen, the real reason, the number one reason why I chose to homeschool was because there was so much homework happening that there was no time for family discipleship. And I was frustrated because I felt like family discipleship is so important. And how is my child going to, something funny is happening in the other room apparently, how is my child going to grow up to be a man of God if I have no time to invest in his spiritual life? And I felt it wasn't fair to him after being in school all day, coming home and doing hours of homework, that, in a couple of hours of free time that he had every day, that I say, okay, let's sit down and do some, spiritual development. He was already exhausted. He was already frustrated. He just wanted to be left alone, and he did not want to think about reading or writing anything. And I completely understood that. And so I felt like we had come to a place where we needed to make a decision. And, first of all, he wasn't really excited about homeschooling. And I had brought it up to him a couple of times, and he was totally against that. He wanted to, attend school with his friends. My husband had never heard of homeschooling until he met me. And so he wasn't fully on board either. And I wasn't going to make a decision, especially that my husband wasn't fully on board with. But as God would have it, circumstances brought all of these things together. And my husband was in full agreement with us homeschooling him. And my son was really excited then to come home and begin homeschooling. And so really the number one reason was that decision that we needed to have that time and that opportunity for that spiritual development. And that was really the number one reason. I think the number 2 reason was because I've always wanted to homeschool. I am myself a homeschool graduate. I was homeschooled from 4th grade through high school, and even did distance learning in college. And so I was a homeschool graduate. I had never envisioned my children actually attending school. I always wanted to be my children's teacher. I always wanted to be a teacher. And so I think that was number 2, was that it's something I always wanted. God gave me the desire of my heart. And so it took a little bit of time to get there, but it happened. And I believe the number 3 reason why I wanted to homeschool as my children was because I wanted to give them the opportunity to learn in a way that is most conducive to their own learning style. Both of our children are unique. I do have 2 children that have mixed expressive receptive language disorder. And so obviously there is some challenges there. Now my oldest child is really kind of on the outskirts of that, really kind of coming out of that. He'll always have these little quirks, but with him, the expressive and receptive language is really starting to pick up tremendously. My youngest child is still very much in the thick of it. And so I felt like I needed to be able to tailor their education to their needs and to their specific learning styles. And so those are my top 3 reasons. The second question is, what are ways that I practice self-care? For me, I call it soul care. And the reason why I call it soul care is because I really feel like, I come back to Jesus' words, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am weak and lowly of heart, and you shall find rest for your souls. And so for me, I tend to call it soul care. So what are ways that I practice that? Oh, I can do so much better in this. Why do I say that? It's because I get up really early in the morning because, like I said, I do work from home. And so that morning time, I have my time with the Lord. That is definitely one way that I practice soul care, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I work, so I get up early in the morning so I can have my time with the Lord and get one portion of my client work done. And then my kids get up and we do school. And then once they're done with school, we have lunch together as a family, or dinner. We call it dinner. And in the country where I live in, our main meal of the day is between 2 and 3 in the afternoon. So then we have our meal, and then once they're done, I'm off to the races, getting more client work done. And then that's when, I try to give, some just fun time with my kids. I don't want the only time that I spend with my children to be when we're doing school. And so then we do a lot of fun things, and then it's time for them to go to bed. And so my day's done. And so my day is rush, 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 rush. So how do I practice soul care? Well, the first one is I invest in my time with the Lord. For me, that is crucial. That is really, really super important, because I can't grow as a believer in my relationship with Christ if I'm not investing in that time with Him. And so, I spend a good amount of time reading and praying, meditating on scripture, really studying deep into scripture. I feel like this is probably this is the most important thing that I do in a day. For me, my Bible study is about taking an entire book of the Bible and studying that book out. And I look at, original language. So I'm looking at the Hebrew meanings, the Greek meanings of words. And I may spend months and months in just one book of the Bible, but I really dig in deep and then try to get the overall context, and then the deeper context of what is being said in that book. So that's one way. The second way that I practice soul care is that I try to make sure that my evenings are free after my kids go to bed, so that I have at least a half an hour to unwind, sit with my husband, and we'll watch something on television, or chat and talk. And then the third thing that I do for soul care is I am very, very intentional about taking care of my health. I am I do have a chronic illness. I have adrenal fatigue, and which manifests itself in a myriad of different symptoms, and has been absolutely excruciating to get through. But I have learned ways to really keep it under wraps to make sure that I have the energy that I need. I follow a ketogenic diet, and that has been a massive game changer for me. Probably the best thing that has worked for me overall of anything that I have tried in the past almost 12 years that I have, 12 years, it's been a little over 12 years since I discovered that I have adrenal fatigue. Okay, so next question. What are my homeschool strengths, and what are the areas that I need to improve on? So I could probably really focus a lot on the last part of that question because I tend to be hypercritical of myself. But I believe my homeschool strengths, if we're talking about homeschool, so I think of this really in the context of subjects. That's kind of how, I don't know that that's maybe the way that question was intended, but that's kind of where I'm going to kind of lean towards. I believe really I'm strong in history. History and English. I'll do those two. And I pick history first because I love history so much. And I'm excited because this year we are studying the medieval period of history. And that is my absolute favorite era of history. On my own time, I will listen to documentaries about medieval history, and I love watching, historical reenactments and things like that. And so, but I love history, and I've actually dreamed a couple times of actually taking our homeschool and making history the core, and then just sort of building everything around that. And I don't know that would work very well, but it is something that I would actually love to do sometime. Maybe I could take a year and give it a try. I don't know. But anyway, history, English, because I love language in general. I believe that becoming fluent in a second language, which is the language of the country that I live in, really helped me to fine tune my understanding of the English language and grammar. And so even though, language is a struggle for my children, I think maybe God chose to give me those, children with these specific needs because language is so strong for me. And so I'm able to sort of give them tools to help prop up those weaknesses. And so those are definitely my strengths. I think areas that I need improvement in, and I'm going to vary now away from subjects into probably just the way that I function versus the way my children function. I tend to be a little bit more militaristic, which is definitely not a strength. I'm super schedule oriented, and I'm that way in my own personal life. I have things that I do at specific times of the day, and I feel like that helps me to stay on task. And for me, that is super important. I have a lot on my plate. I work from home and then homeschool at the same time. And so, I have to keep that schedule on task so that everything happens in a day that's supposed to happen in a day. And kids don't always follow that schedule, and it can be that a kid starts getting into a subject and they hit a snag. And, my thing is that, I really like things to happen in order. And so, we need to be, finished with our book at the end of the year, which is not that important. I've had to let things go, and I don't do that easily. That is definitely a weakness. So my tendency to start, day one on page one and end the year on the last page and keep things going. Let's get things done at a certain time. I've had to really, really let all of that go. And I am little by little letting all of that go, but it is certainly a weakness, and it's definitely an area where God is definitely sharpening me and refining me because, at the end of the day, all of those things that I feel are so important are just not really that important. They just really aren't. And they're certainly not important enough to cause stress in my family, which is what I tend to do. So I'm definitely becoming strengthened in that weakness. There's still a lot of room for improvement though. Next question, share affirmations or encouragement that help to fight that self-doubt that we feel regarding our capabilities as a homeschool mom, and also remind us that we can do this. Okay, so as another YouTuber in this collaboration, Tanisha Kemp, shared, I don't believe in affirmations. I've actually blogged about this, and I'll leave that blog post in the description below. But I don't believe in affirmations, but I do believe in encouragement. I do believe in that. And I believe encouragement is super biblical, and we do need to encourage one another. And this is an area where we really need to do better. I believe a lot of homeschool moms tend to be, I think because we may have a tendency to be super critical of ourselves, and I know I have that tendency. we sometimes also tend to be a little bit critical towards one another. And so, and we tend to kind of hold to our, methods. I tend to block schedule, other people do other things. And I think, and of course, we think that our way is the best because it is the best for our family. But I think, encouraging one another to, and so here would be one of my first ones, encourage one another to find what works for them and to really stick to that and be strong in that, because I think we are always looking for the next best thing. We're always looking for something that's going to work better. And I think, just finding what works best for you and then just sticking to that and just letting that sort of, be the core of what you do as a homeschool family. I think that is something we need to really do. I think the biggest encouragement that anyone ever gave me as a homeschool mom is that you are never behind in homeschool. That really helped me a lot because my son started out behind as far as language goes, as far as reading comprehension goes. Actually, both of my kids, this is not just for my oldest son, both of my kids started out behind in this reading comprehension, being able to actually, read an assignment and then do it correctly as it was written. Sometimes they both still struggle in that, like math, story problems are a huge issue still with both of my children. And when you start out behind, catching up is really, really hard and very arduous. And, being free from having to do that, saying, you don't have to catch up because you're never behind in homeschool. You are where you are. That was the biggest encouragement that was given to me. And it is the encouragement that I try to pass on to other homeschool moms because, we have this sense that we have to keep up with public school. And that would be my last piece of encouragement that I could give to a mom is you're not in competition. You're not in competition with any other homeschool family. You're not in competition definitely with the homeschool system. So stop trying to measure yourself. I have to say this is something that I'm letting go this year is the constant measuring of my children against children that are in the public school system. There is a tendency to try to measure ourselves and make sure we're doing enough, that we are doing a good enough job, that our children are keeping up. And there's no measurement. First of all, the homeschool material that we use is not the same type of material that they use. The timeline in which we learn certain things in certain subjects is not going to be the same as the timeline that the school uses. We have, for the most of us, a limited amount of children. They have a lot of children. I mean, it's really comparing apples and oranges. It's not a fair comparison to compare your children to other children. One of the benefits of homeschooling is that we can let our children just fly to the sky in a subject that they excel in, that they love, that they are really, really good in, and then they can just, do what they can in the subjects where they're weak in, and we can take more time there. And so trying to measure our children, across the board to children that are in the public school system, or measure our own success in schooling our children against, teachers who are in the homeschool system, it's not a fair comparison. If God called you to this, he's going to equip you for it. And so we have to just lean in on that grace, knowing that if God called me to do this, he's going to equip me for the job. He's going to give me the tools that I need every day in the proportion to my need. And so resting in that, and I'm preaching to myself. As I'm saying this, I'm saying things that, God has to remind me of every single day. It's not fair to compare. Paul said that we should not compare ourselves among ourselves because when we do, we are not wise. And so that's something I have to constantly remind myself of, is that it's not fair to compare myself. So last question, what are resources that I can recommend for, or that I use for professional development? As Desiree Melville in her video mentioned, she mentioned Homeschool Summits, and I have to echo that, and I will echo that a million times over. I have attended a few homeschool online conferences, and I've actually participated in an online conference before. And I have to say that most times getting into the conference, I'm just left with feeling a little bit disappointed because either what I heard is what I've heard already a lot before, or read online, or could watch for free on YouTube. And that's a little annoying, I will say, because if you invest money in something and you discover, wow, I've already learned all of that for free somewhere else, that's a little bit disappointing. And so, or I just felt like it just wasn't well presented. And that's just a personal thing for me. It's just me being a little picky. But I have to say, I took a chance on Homeschool Summits because of a homeschool blogger that I follow, the proverbial homemaker. She was a speaker, and she's been a speaker, I think, at every single one of their summits that they've put on. I followed her for a long time. She's a fellow Oregonian. Hello, Oregon. And so I love her, and I know that she puts out quality content. And so on her recommendation, I went ahead and signed up. I went ahead and took a chance and upgraded, and I was not disappointed. As a matter of fact, up here on my wall, I've upgraded 3 summits with Homeschool Summits, and I wrote down every single one of the speakers, and then I check marked every single one that I wanted to go back and listen to their session again. And I have to say, in every single one of their categories, there are no less than 6 or 7 speakers that I wanted to go back and listen to again, because they were just that good. And it was not content that I was finding anywhere else. And it was so practical and so applicable. And for me, the biggest piece was that the central, it seems to be the central theme for the majority of them, if not almost all of them, is how to keep Christ central in our homeschool, and how does every subject in our homeschool reflect Christ and in God and His Word. And so for me, that was just every session I would listen to, and it's just a big yes, yes, yes. And so if I could recommend anything at all, it would be that. It would be Homeschool Summits. Definitely check them out. They run 3 or 4 every year, and they give you an opportunity to upgrade, and you get lots of free stuff with the upgrade. Plus, of course, you get unlimited access to that content that was shared in that summit. And so I think number one, that, and I think, another resource that I use for my professional development as a homeschool mom is my mom. Because my mom is a homeschool. She was a homeschooler. She homeschooled all 3 of us kids. And my dad as well, because, my dad lobbied in the state of Washington to get homeschooling legal in the state of Washington. That was when I was obviously very young. I remember him doing that. I remember, because we lived in the state capitol at that time in Olympia, Washington. He was at the state capitol, working with different politicians to get homeschooling legalized in the state of Washington. And they were firm believers in homeschooling. They still are firm believers in homeschooling. They have given me immeasurable advice in homeschooling. And I very often go to them with questions and just sharing. And they're always willing to listen and encourage and give, some tips where they feel like, tips are needed. And so they are an invaluable resource. Having, spent their time in the field and having, been in the trenches, they've been there, done that. They can offer so much advice. And so, they are an invaluable resource to me. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Once again, be sure to check out the playlist in the description below to get a lot more homeschool encouragement and tips and all of that from other homeschooling moms. If you like this video, be sure to leave that thumbs up. That lets YouTube know that people are liking this video, so it'll just show it to other people. Also, be sure to ring that bell for notifications. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed and if you like my content. What are some resources that you would recommend to other homeschool moms? Leave that in the comment section below, because I would love to hear what your recommendations are. Great homeschooling resources for homeschooling moms. I'll see you in the next video, and bye.